going on road trips? Well, if so, then this video is for you. Because I am about to go on a very long road trip tomorrow, actually. I am going to make a video sharing some road trip tips that I've discovered, and, well, it depends on what you ride and you save. Maybe it's different for a gas or electric car. I've decided, you know what, I'm going to include some road trip tips that apply to both, and maybe some specifics for each, because, I mean, those cars are built slightly different, and yeah, etc, etc. So, you know what, let's just get into it. So should I be mean and save the gas car tips for last, just that way you watch to the very end? Nah, you're probably just going to skip to that segment anyways, so I'll just start with gas first, because that's typically what's most applicable to most of us. But hey, stay for the electric car road trip tips as well, okay? Anywho, let's start off with our gas cars. So what are some tips that you should definitely take into consideration when we go on a road trip? Well, first of all, before you leave, and this applies to every gas car, even diesel as well, check the engine oil. Seriously, you do not want to destroy your engine out on the road just because you're low on oil. Always check the engine oil before you go on a road trip. You'll save yourself the hassle and a very, very expensive repair bill.
I'm not sure I understand.
Next up, if you have such a huge problem with getting from point A to point B and you're concerned about, oh no, when will I have to refuel and what if I can't find a gas station in time, fuel up at your local gas station first before you hit the road. Some people don't do this. Kind of leads to a bit of a headache in terms of, okay, where am I going to fill up? I don't know where there are any gas stations, even though sure, there is basically one in pretty much every town, but still, maybe you don't know where the next town is. It helps to fill up first before you actually leave and go into your road trip. And for the most part, I mean, some vehicles might not exactly make the full tank, but a general day's worth of driving, you can usually get by in at least a full tank. There are very few instances where you might actually have to refill during the first day of a trip. It's not very likely, assuming you fuel up first. Next up, and this applies to everyone, even people in electric cars too, make sure you use the bathroom before you leave. Seriously, use the bathroom before you go, and also be sure to grab your snacks so you don't have to make any of those random stops where you're just, well, you're hungry, but you don't want to stop because, well, it's annoying. Use the bathroom and grab your snacks before you get going. And those are basically, well, my tips if you drive a gas car. Maybe you should take some of these into consideration before you go on a road trip, okay? Especially check the engine oil first. You really need to do that, otherwise you could potentially destroy your engine during the middle of the trip, and it's gonna be a pain to repair because you don't know where you're currently at on the trip. You don't know where all the repair shops are. Follow some of these tips. It might make your road trip a lot more enjoyable than they currently are. But what if you drive an electric car, which I'm actually going to offer a lot more tips for this because it's a little more complicated to road trip an electric car. Or maybe you've actually wanted to get an electric car, but you're too nervous about road tripping in it, so no, you don't want to get one at all. Well, here's some tips that I've actually witnessed many other EV drivers follow, and as a matter of fact, I'm just going to relay them to you right now, so let's do this. First of all, the night before you leave for your trip, this is kind of important actually, the night before you leave for your trip, make sure your car is plugged in, so that way when you leave the house, you are topped off at full battery, so that way you can just leave. You don't need to stop at a supercharger and wait for it to fill up the battery and, well, waste more time once the battery gets close to full, but yeah, such and such like that, so yeah. God, will you please let me film? Be sure to plug your car in the night before you go on your trip. It really helps. Next tip I have, if you do happen to get low on range, now for the most part, you don't typically have to worry about this. However, if you do happen to get yourself low on range, like maybe you're in single-digit percents and you're still a bit of a ways from a charging station, shut off the climate control because that actually does require some energy to power. First of all, you have an electric heater which generates a lot of power draw from that battery, so yeah, if you shut off the heat, it definitely saves that. Same goes for air conditioning because it requires electricity to spin a motor to power the AC unit and such. So yeah, if you find yourself low on battery, shut the climate off. assuming that it's not too unbearable. Now here's a cool tip that I have for you guys. Now sure, you could try to jet from closest charger to the next closest charger to the next closest charger. Sure, that can definitely save you some hassle and worry about, oh, am I actually going to make it and such? Well, that does generate one problem, and here's why. It's actually going to take a lot longer to charge and get to your destination. Here's why. First of all, the tip is try to actually arrive at the charger in the single-digit percentage range. Why is that? Well, the lower the battery, the faster that the charging station is going to be able to ramp up and charge your vehicle faster without having to worry about swallowing the battery or destroying it and such. So yeah, you actually want to arrive at the charger with the lowest state of charge possible. I know it can be scary, but hey, we do this with our gas cars all the time, okay? I'm pretty sure we can do it in our electric cars as well. So yeah, try to arrive near single-digit percentage at the charging stations. And while you're charging, speaking of which, study your EV's charging curve to make the most effective charging stop. Why is that? Well, obviously when you arrive at the charging station, you're going to basically charge at max speeds, assuming that the charger doesn't have any problems. Once it gets to about 50% or around the 70%, somewhere in that area, study your car's charging curve, because once it actually gets closer to full, it actually slows down. So you want to study your car's charging curve so you can make the most out of your charging stop. Be it save the most amount of time hogging the stall so other people can charge, so you can just get on your way and actually make it to your destination. Study your EV's charging curve. It will definitely help influence your charging stop. If you don't know the charging curve, you might see yourself spending about, I don't know, 40 minutes, 45 minutes to an hour at a charging station, which is not really efficient. You can definitely save a lot of time if you know how the car charges and study it. Next up, speaking of charging, yeah, because that's basically, there's a bit of a theme when it comes to road tripping and EV. It's the charging. It's not about the range of the car necessarily. It's actually more about the charging. Here's one tip that I have especially. Know your vehicle's top charging rate, okay? Some vehicles, like I believe the Hyundai Ioniq and the Porsche Taycan, for example, those cap out at around 350 kilowatts, I think. Don't quote me on that, but it should be right around there somewhere. All Teslas that you buy brand new today are most likely going to come with a max of 250 kilowatt charging speeds, while other vehicles like the Ford Mach-E or the Ford F-150 Lightning, those are going to be capped at 150 kilowatts. So you want to know where your EV's charging speeds actually peak at, okay? They're going to fluctuate during the actual charging curve, but you actually want to know how fast can your EV actually charge up to make the most effective stop. And that's because not every charging station or charging stall is the same. Tesla superchargers, there's 3 different versions currently out there right now. Version 1 supports up to like 120. Version 2 is 150, which is a tad faster. And then everybody loves the V3 because, 250 kilowatt charging, that's fast. So yeah, if your vehicle supports up to those speeds, check the stalls and make sure they actually can charge at the speeds that your vehicle can. It definitely helps make the most effective charging stop. And also, maybe you have a slower charging EV like the Ford Mustang Mach-E or the F-150 Lightning, because those are at 150 kilowatts compared to the higher charging speeds of a lot of other EVs. If that's the case and you know you have a slower charging EV, save the faster charging stalls for other people who can make more use of them. It's just being polite, it's being courteous. Can't we be nice to other people who also need to use the charging stations as well? So yeah, know where your EV actually peaks at and use the appropriate stalls. If you've got a slower charging EV, don't use the super fast 350 kilowatt one. Use the 150 kilowatt one. And if you do have a faster charging EV, do pay attention to the charging speeds on the stalls, because, well, they're definitely going to guarantee whether you get a fast charge or not. Now, the Tesla supercharging network, for the most part, is more reliable than the US's CCS. In Europe relies completely on CCS. They picked out a standard, and because of that, well, for the most part, the CCS network in Europe is actually pretty decent. But here in the US, it's trash, it's garbage, it sucks. The Tesla network is superior to CCS. But either way, if you have a CCS car, for example, and the charging station doesn't work because, I mean, there are instances where the Tesla charging stations don't work, but not near as much as the CCS. There are some things that you might want to check. First of all, is the station actually powered on? Maybe you did get everything set and connected, but for some reason it's charging really slow. What you might actually want to check is the temperature of the cable, because this will affect your charging speed greatly. Is the cable hot? If the cable is hot, then move to a different charging station if possible, because believe it or not, EV charging cables, they actually have cooling integrated into them. Check the cable and make sure it's not hot. Otherwise, yeah, you might have a broken station and you need to move to the next one. So yeah, if your EV, it seems to be just charging so slow, first of all, check the speed of the stall, make sure it's actually the correct one. And if it's the correct speed that should be charging at, well, check the cable. Make sure that the cable is not hot. And the last tip, while your vehicle's charging, because it is going to take longer to charge your car than basically the 5 minutes it takes to fuel up a gas tank, stop and use the restroom. Like, you might thank yourself later. I have already made this mistake enough in a regular gas car every single time we fueled up. Actually use the bathroom when you're waiting for your car to charge. It can't hurt, seriously. So those are some road trip tips that I can offer you as of today, and maybe there are more to come in the future. So with that done, I am going to prepare to actually go on a road trip myself to South Dakota. Yay, fun. All right, thank you for watching. Do me a favor and interact with stuff below. My name is DeWolf, Random Alpha, signing out.